So what's the arrangement? The building will allow you to put the mural up, correct? But you have to pay. You got to raise the money.
Funds.
Okay.
And we just got 3 of the bigger ones, and you know me, Trey. I like things big.
Yeah.
So those murals are 40 feet and bigger.
That's a big mural.
Yeah.
My mural's only like 16 feet.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, guys, Sarasota SpeaX is excited to announce that we are partnering with the More to Life organization on their charity golf tournament September 30th. We're teeing it up for freedom at Laurel Oak. We're going to drop the link in the description below. You can sign up your foursome to join us at Laurel Oak on September 30th for a charity golf tournament. It's going to be a great time. See you there. Hey, we're back with episode 64 of Sarasota SpeaX. As always, I'm Brad Hannon.
Trey Martell.
Felipe Colon.
And we've got an amazing guest with us today, Walter Gilbert, an absolute figure in the community. We're looking forward to getting into that. And the Vice President of DEI at Selby Gardens. How you doing, Walter?
Good afternoon.
Thanks for joining us, man. We're excited to dig into this. And from what I understand, you've done a lot of great work and 4th-generation resident of Sarasota. Is that correct?
Yes, I am. And I'm happy to have for you guys to have me.
We're happy to have you too, man. I'm going to kick it to Felipe to get us started.
Well, you know, I mentioned earlier, like, we haven't had, besides Kyle Batee, who's our mayor at the time and is from Newtown, we haven't had a lot of guests from the Newtown community. So I figured it would be great to start there and talk about the kind of role that Newtown has had in the greater Sarasota community and why the history and the culture is so important.
Well, to talk about Newtown, we have to first talk about Overtown. Overtown is a community that was the first black community here in Sarasota. Most people now know it as the Rosemary District. That was the late 1800s when black people first started coming here. They came here for 2 reasons. First reason wasn't Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, or South Carolina, because we're talking 1 generation out of slavery, right? The second reason was Sarasota, in fact, Florida was just being developed. Sarasota was basically a wilderness. People still driving horse and buggies then, and they needed labor, and they needed cheap labor to do that hard work. And these people came here, and they had a certain skill sets that was needed to develop this area. So as they came, they eventually settled in the area just north of Main Street. The boundaries of Overtown was 41, US 41 to the west, Orange Avenue to the east, 10th Street to the north, and 3rd Street, which is now Fruitville Road, to the south. So that was the original black community. If you go over there now, you wouldn't know no black people ever was there. And that happened purposely.
Okay.
Once the people that was settled south of Main Street figured out they needed that area for their growth from downtown, those people had to be moved out of there. So what they did was they plotted an area as far north on the city limits as possible, and they called it Newtown. And that's how Newtown started.
So Newtown is really just the new Overtown.
Exactly.
You know,
that's where the name comes from, I'm sure.
Yeah,
huh?
never thought of that before.
Exactly.
I think the first time I heard of Overtown was when Kyle Batee was on. We had briefly touched on it. So that's really cool history, the boundaries and all, and I'm picturing it in my head as you're saying that. Now, is it okay? Would it be fair to say that wasn't at the time a very positive move for the Overtown community to be pushed off to Newtown?
When you look at what's over there today, no, they didn't benefit from that at all. But we got to remember, you know, we're talking the late 1800s, early 1900s. You can imagine what the area looked like. It wasn't what it looks like today. You know, there was dirt roads, drainage ditches, outhouses, chicken coops in the backyard.
Right.
So, but that was Sarasota in general. Right. So, you know, it's all.
So what tactics did they use to push them towards Newtown from Overtown?
Well, the first thing they do is stop services. You know, they stop cleaning out the ditches,
like municipal services that like everybody would expect to get living anywhere in the city.
And if they wasn't the property owners, the landlords, of course, would raise the rent or just put them out. But once they developed Newtown, they made it attractive. The first thing that happened was they moved to school. We're talking segregation, so they couldn't go to any school they wanted to. They had to go to the black school. So they moved that north. And if you look at where Booker High School and that complex is, it's on the city limit line. So they moved that as far north as they could move that. So once the school moved and they started developing the area of Newtown, people started going up there and living, and because the school was there. Then the churches followed. Then the black businesses followed. Because we're talking segregation.
Yeah.
Those black businesses that was on Central Avenue
need to be near the black community.
Had to be near the black community. So now this took some time. It wasn't an overnight thing. Okay, I think when they first started doing it, it was about 1917. All right, but history, world history, started affecting it happening at the rate they wanted it to. You had World War I. All right, then you had the land boom bust that happened. Then you had the Great Depression. Then you had World War II. Over all this period of time, this was slowly happening. By 1950s, it was on and popping. All right, to the point where 1970, everybody was gone.
Wow. And that's something that obviously takes some time to do, takes some, strategery, right? Some strategic development. But now, would you say that it's a good thing? Like now, would you say the Newtown community is a positive? It's a positive change for the Newtown community being in that Newtown area.
It was starting in the 50s and 60s when the community was still a real self-contained community. Mm-hmm. A lot of people say integration was the worst thing happened to black communities, especially in the South. Explain
what you mean by integration.
During this period of time, I'm talking when this move was being made, Sarasota was just like most of the Deep South, segregated, Jim Crow laws, things of that nature. I can remember when I was growing up, if you went down on Main Street, you couldn't go in one of those stores and just go to buy things that you needed. Mm-hmm. You couldn't pull up to the hamburger stand in the 5 and dime and get a hamburger. I can remember my dad had a rule that, and my mother used to have it about this thing. If you can't try on something, you don't go in there and buy it. And that was one of the rules a lot of those stores had. You could buy something out of some of them, but you couldn't try on. Like you couldn't try on a pair of shoes. You could buy the shoes, but you couldn't try them on.
They'll take your money, but they won't treat you like an equal as a customer. Right.
Exactly.
Which is
so once integration happened and those rules went away, the black community went to these stores. They started going to these businesses. But at the same time, the businesses that we had to have was losing that support. And integration turned into a one-way street, not a two-way street.
Right, they didn't have the monopoly on the black business anymore.
Correct. So our business district started to suffer and eventually went away. Well, we're in the process of doing some things about that. It took a couple generations to figure out how this happened and what to do to fix it. So that's one of the things I'm helping work on now.
So it seems like that era and coming up, which is interesting to me because we're not so far removed from that because, you're still.
It wasn't that long ago.
It's not that long ago, and you're sitting here with us right now. Sarasota was segregated to like the 70s, basically, functionally, right? And we'll get into that more. But so that's part of what inspired you to take on the many roles that you have in the community, right? Coming out of that time and saying, we got to keep working.
Well, I grew up with a mother who was in every damn thing. Any club, any function, she was heavy in the NAACP, and I was kind of a baghead growing up, meaning she couldn't leave me home by myself.
She brought you with her.
So she used to drag me to all these meetings, and you're sitting there. I didn't want to be there, but I was hearing it, but I wasn't listening.
It's like through osmosis.
But as I got older, I started listening. And I saw the world around me. As you get older, you start realizing some things. And I just gravitated to it.
Yeah, so at what point in your life was that transition made into like, okay, these are some important issues. I'm looking at the world a little bit differently now. I want to actually make an impact or make a difference in these things. When did that start to happen?
In '68, when we had to boycott Sarasota County schools.
You want to talk a little bit more about that?
In 1968, the federal government showed up at Sarasota County School Board offices and say, hey, you've been under court order since the 54 Supreme Court Act. Separate is not equal. You're supposed to be integrating these schools. And Sarasota County Schools was like, yeah, we're going to get to it. They say, no, if you don't get it done, we'll do it for you. They didn't want that to happen. So they came up with a plan. And the plan was, I don't know if you guys are going to be familiar with this geography, but MLK Drive, which was 27th Street at the time, they took that street and made it a dividing street within the community. Everybody to the north of that street would go to Riverview High School and all its feeder schools. Anybody to the south would go to Sarasota High School and all its feeder schools. And the community said, well, what about this whole school booker we got sitting here? So well, we're just going to close that out. Yeah, the community didn't like that idea. So they say, well, you got to come up with another plan.
Was there a reason why they didn't like that? Why that wasn't well received?
They would have to, yeah, because in our community, there's 3 pillars in the community that pretty much go by: family, church, and school. You take any one of those out of a community, that community pretty much is going to die.
Okay.
It's going to be, but it's going to die.
Right.
And the other key thing to that is just that arbitrary line they took. There's families living on both sides of that line. Brothers, uncles, cousins, shit. I mean,
you're good.
Probably some brothers and sisters was on the other side of those lines. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, but here's the counter argument. You know, brothers go to different high schools all the time.
If they play football.
Yeah.
So. But it destroys the family.
Okay. But I get what you're saying. You're breaking up a community that there's something else that brings all those people together there besides just,
Plus
geography, right?
Plus, if you're familiar with where Booker sits, there's some railroad tracks in the back. At that time, the community just the other side of that tracks was white. We would have been getting bussed out of the community when those kids to just walk across the tracks,
right,
and integrate Booker,
right.
So I mean that was there, but that's was not the mindset of the people in charge.
But it kind of sounds like it was a way of them complying, but also being like, yeah, reluctantly,
exactly,
and making a point,
exactly,
because they could have just integrated the school by saying, okay, these kids around this radius can all go to Booker,
right?
But instead they said, screw you guys,
yeah,
we're going to send
and they were
Sarasota.
Still at that time dealing with the mindsets of what had been. Those people, we're not going to Booker, we're white. That's a black school,
Bingo.
Yeah.
But so at that time, the community decided to boycott the Sarasota County school system.
And I assume at this time, by the way, that school choice wasn't really a thing either.
No.
Like you didn't have options. You couldn't really.
No.
School choice wasn't a thing 10 years ago. It's brand new.
So we boycotted Sarasota County school system. And that boycott, it lasted just 30 days. When I was going to school growing up and they took roll call in the day, I used to think they just wanted to see my face and hear my voice. But we found out butts in the seats bring that money.
Right.
Federal funding.
Exactly. So once we weren't going to school, they didn't get that check. So they came back to the table and they came up with the plan was, we'll keep Booker open as a junior high school and add a grade a year until it's a high school again. And you know what? We'll stick a VPA program in there to attract white students to get this thing really rolling. So I was in 10th grade in. That's when my to answer the original question, attitudes, and I really got involved in social issues and stuff.
So, not to fast forward over the whole civil rights movement, but, there were all sorts of other things. There, the segregated beaches, the library. I know Ed James worked on that, senior. But there's one thing that you did, I think, that's going to leave an indelible mark on Sarasota through the political system.
Oh, okay.
It's a good thing. Don't worry. It sounds like it's a good thing.
The political system, right? So we've established what Newtown is. We established why it's culturally important. We've established the history. Tell us about the federal lawsuit to establish single-member districts in Sarasota that finally got Newtown a representative, or North Sarasota. I shouldn't even say Newtown. I should say North Sarasota. That's really what it is. North Sarasota never really had representation.
Exactly.
Until you and your cohort came around.
that's fast forwarding to
a long way.
Yeah, from the boycott to that. But by then, I had become president of Sarasota branch in NAACP, and we're looking around, and it's one thing about me: if I'm going to be involved in something, I'm just not going to be sitting in the chair.
Yeah,
I need to make something happen that ain't nobody else making happen.
You can't be on the sidelines.
So my thing to make happen was to get somebody elected to the city commission. And some guys had ran, but it was pitiful.
A landslide the other way.
At one time, the city of Sarasota had 3 city commissioners living on the same street out on St. Armand's. Yeah. That was legal.
That whole what's that whole rule where they can't talk and discuss the
sunshine
didn't exist then.
Yeah, they didn't have that back then.
It wouldn't matter if they did because they lived on the same street. They're probably having dinner together.
So we took it on ourselves to figure out how to fix that, and the way to fix it, as the branch was doing through other areas in the country, was suing governments, cities, counties for single-member district voting. And that means that you would have districts, geography determined districts that those people in that area voted for somebody actually living in that district. All right? That way it would ensure you're getting representation from different areas of a community.
Right.
But to do that, you would have to sue the city of Sarasota, and then you would have to prove your case. All right? So as we're sitting there saying, yeah, let's do that, I say, well, we got to run somebody so we can prove he can't get elected. And when I looked up from my papers, everybody was looking at me.
Oh, I guess I just volunteered.
I was like, whoops. So long story short, I ran 3 times, got my butt kicked 3 times, and I hate losing. Trey could attest to that.
I bet.
But I was like, oh, man, we better win this case. So we'll whoop everybody in there. But it was proven in court that that's not a good way to have community representation. So we won the case, and we ended up with single-member district voting in the city of Sarasota, where you have 3 district seats and 2 at large.
And what year was this?
The case was wrapped up in '85.
Okay.
So all these things exist now that seem like common sense, but over the history of time weren't necessarily common sense. When we think about voting for district representation, it just seems like something that's a given. There should be someone that lives in that community that represents that community's vote, right? And it wasn't always that way.
You sit here and think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But when people that have the power, they ain't just giving you no power up.
So
you
this
take it.
This is what you mean by a disruptor?
Pot stirrer.
Yeah, I mean, you got to upset the apple cart. You think they all lived on the same street? You don't think they were running the government in their interest? Sure, they were.
Yeah.
Well, and when we have folks like you on, I just feel like the listeners that maybe listen to the clips or that don't follow along with every podcast, like we get to sit here and learn the history. Like this is the benefit of doing this podcast. I mean, getting the historical side of Overtown to Newtown to the the boycotting of the schools and things, stuff like sometimes, people have never heard, right? And we get these stories out. So it's really awesome to, kind of hear that side. I'm really curious, when you made that transition, right? So you're sophomore year in high school, that's a time frame in which most people are deciding what they want to do for their career, right? So they want to be a firefighter, they want to be a doctor, they want to, in your, sophomore year in high school, was this a decision like I want to be in politics? I want to be.
I wanted to be a football player.
Okay. So
that's all I thought about it day and night.
Yeah. So this was an afterthought essentially when football
kind of fell into this.
Yeah. Much like Trey fell into roofing.
Yeah, because he wanted to be a football player.
I wanted to be a football player as well,
and he was.
Yeah, he was.
But you know what? Now you're not hitting them hard on the field right now, but like the example of the boycott, they were hitting them hard in the wallet. Right, you're hitting them where it counts, where they notice they make changes. You're stirring the pot, like you said. This is a great transition, I think, to dive deeper into, you know, some of the different community initiatives that you've done and the boards that you're on and the things you founded. I mean, there's so many of them.
We're talking more current too, right?
Yeah, I mean, these are things that are going on right now.
That's what I'm curious.
Let's transition to, those are some great accomplishments we just went over. What are you working on now? What's the next big thing?
Well, yeah, but these are all the boards that he's on right now.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the next milestone that you want to accomplish?
I'm in a battle with Sarasota County Commission right now. Well, we'll be a battle. They don't even know it's coming.
What's the battle about?
The battle is about the Sarasota Ring and Redskins property out on 17th Street. That organization started in 1960. It finally went away for some reasons in 2018. So that's almost 60 years of an organization that was known national-wide as a premier youth football organization. Fun fact about the Redskins. Sarasota Redskins was integrated before the school system was.
Wow.
Yeah, I was one of the 4 first players to play out there. And
so it was traditionally a white league?
It started as a white league.
That's funny because growing up, I thought of it as a majority black league.
Of course.
Yeah.
So that in itself, this community owes that organization a debt of gratitude, and I'll tell you why I say that. As I said, they were integrated prior to the school system being integrated. By the time integration came along with the school system, it helped because now you had some kids that had already been playing the most inclusive sport in the world, football, together. Mm-hmm. Now they're in school together. When things in other communities was going rough, it made it a little easier, you know?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because they had something else to focus on.
Not only that, they were friends now.
They're buddies,
right?
Yeah.
Well, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they were friends to the point where if somebody else was messing with him, now you're messing with me too. Right. I don't care what he looks like. And that happened all the time, more than a lot of people understand. So that property now is up against the wall for some. It's under some pressures of being made into something else.
Now, does the city own that property?
County.
The county does. Okay.
Right.
The big issue, from what I understand with that property, because I worked on a project where we proposed a project up the road from there, mm-hmm. And that was also county-owned land. Mm-hmm. And my understanding is they own the land, but the Redskins organization owns the buildings. And the biggest problem is the buildings are in disrepair.
Well, what they did was they condemned the buildings.
Bingo. So they kind of tie your hands a little bit.
Yeah.
But they're remodeling that whole area to be like a sports corridor.
Yes.
And really, you know, you don't want to get left behind.
Exactly.
That puts you in a position to do it now or don't do it.
So if you were the king of Sarasota County, what would be like the ideal outcome for that property?
I would turn it into a youth football facility.
Okay. And
the history is there. The community that would use that is there, and it just makes perfect sense.
So you just want to bring back Redskins?
I won't say Redskins.
Okay.
But I want it to be a youth football facility.
Okay. Now, are we steering away from Redskins because of the connotation, the racism of the word?
No.
Okay.
That's
not
another
for the same
issue.
reason Washington did.
Yeah.
But that's not.
This is a Dan Snyder issue? Or
no. Because youth football has changed since the Redskins left, there's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 youth football organizations operating in this area.
So it spreads the talent out too much.
There's 4 of them is right there in the Newtown area. Yeah. That's going to be worked out once we have a facility there. And I'm pretty sure something similar to the Redskin organization will be in that spot.
What's the name? What's the name? I'm sure you have some names in your head.
Walter Gilbert Football.
You sound like Sugar.
Yeah, right. Our last guest. So that's an interesting. I definitely wouldn't have guessed you're going that direction. But for the overall Newtown community, right in the North Sarasota, what are some issues today that we're facing that you're working on, or that some of these organizations that you sit on are trying to improve for maybe non-athletic type stuff?
Well, I am also a member of the Sarasota African American Cultural Coalition. We just had the Leonard Reed House, and I'm getting probably ahead of myself, but we just had the Leonard Reed House, which is a historic house on the National Register. Leonard Reed home used to be on the corner of Boulevard of the Arts. It was 6th Street back in the day. Mm-hmm. But they had to dress that up over there.
Right. Well, they still says 6th Street on the sign, too. You know,
a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, you're right about that.
So, you know, they had to dress that street up with a name, just like they had to dress Overtown up with a name, Rosemary District.
Right.
But on the corner is the Modern Hotel. And that used to be Mr. Reed's home site, and that's where that house sat. You know, so we moved that house because it was under threat of demolition up into the Newtown area, and we set it on a corner there, and we've made it into a little museum. But at the same time, we're going to build a culture center on the property right next door. So that's one of my big Newtown projects that I'm working on.
So that's the one that's spearheaded by Vicki Oldham.
Yes.
She's the director, and then you guys have some big names on that board.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, Ian Black, you know, very well-known real estate agent and developer, commercial.
Dan Dannenheiser.
Dan Dannenheiser, who you know Josh. Washington Hill, great doctor in the area.
Yes.
And of course, Jennifer Romanecki, who's also your boss.
That's right.
So perfect time to segue into that. Hey, we're having a blast here. Get to know Walter Gilbert. If you want to get to know him a little bit more, stay tuned for rapid fire questions fueled by food and beer.
Hi, I'm Walter Gilbert, Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion over at Selby Gardens, and this is Rapid Fire.
10 random questions, 10 specific answers, nothing off limits. This is Rapid Fire, fueled by food and beer. What's your favorite movie?
Godfather.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
What's your biggest fear?
Rats.
What's your favorite place to visit?
Pittsburgh.
What's your favorite show to binge watch?
Show. I don't binge watch. No binge watching.
If you could live the life of anyone for a week, who would it be?
Jim Brown.
You can listen to one band or musical artist for the rest of your life. Who is it?
Beyonce. After Earth, Wind, and Fire.
In a zombie apocalypse, what's your weapon of choice?
The hatchet.
If you could instantly become an expert at anything, what would it be?
Women.
Better that I devote myself to studying the other great history of the universe. Women.
Does pineapple belong on a pizza?
Hell no.
Your dish is pineapple pizza.
Are you kidding me?
After, of course, eating food and beer, where's the first place you would take visitors in Sarasota besides the beach?
Mayaca State Park.
So, you know, obviously we talked a lot about Newtown and, you know, where it came from, Overtown, and what Overtown is now, the Rosemary. Mm-hmm. You've got one particular project that does have your name on it, out of the many things you do. You want to talk about the Gilbert Mural Initiative as well?
I'd be happy to, because I got to get some money to put up another one.
That's what we do here, you know? We help people get exposure.
But, yeah, as I was mentioning earlier about the Overtown area, and how now it's totally gentrified, and you wouldn't know that was the black community here.
Well, they got a plaque, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The county put up. In fact, we had to fight with them to put that up.
I think we can flash back in the editing here to the moment in time where Trey and I learned the term gentrification. Remember that?
Yeah.
That was with Kyle Batee.
Yep.
Yeah.
Gosh, you just reminded me of that.
I knew it. You didn't know it. Trying to group me in with you.
Oh, okay. Well,
I know that. I've seen Shameless.
To be fair, that's more of a northern big city phenomenon than it is a Florida thing.
Because people,
to be fair,
people don't look at it down here like they do up there. It's pretty much pointed up there. You have to like we're telling you this history to figure that out here.
Yeah.
So that term is not used too much here.
Right, it's more obvious up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as a person that knew this history, grew up in most of this history, and the little bad boy that used to sit on the porch and ask his grandmama question after question after question. But she used to feed me, man. She never told me to leave me alone, and she used to tell me all this stuff. But knowing that and being over in that area doing what I do, I'm looking around like, damn, what happened? You know, all of a sudden it was like, bam. Because, you know, all those condos jumped up in the last 5 or 6 years. And I was like, damn.
Well, as soon as they increased the density, you know, restriction in the neighborhood, all the projects got greenlighted.
Yes. Yeah. It was. So I'm sitting there, I'm looking, I'm like, nobody would ever know we were here. And I said, how can I fix that or change that or impact it? And I didn't have no money to build a building. So I said, you know what? I could put certain people on these buildings because I'm looking at these big blank walls.
Canvases.
I just started going to people and started telling them the story. Some people looked at me like, get the hell out of here. You crazy? But I spoke to enough people and told them the story. Once they hear the story, because they don't know it, they're all from somewhere else. You know, the Modern Hotel didn't know that used to be Mr. Reed's homestead. Yeah. You know, and who he was to the history. Right quick, Mr. Reed was Mr. John Gillespie's, who was the first mayor of Sarasota, right-hand man. He laid out the first golf course. Mr. Gillespie got the credit. He ran Mr. Gillespie's whole household, you know. And I could go on and on about people like him.
Please do.
Buck ONeal, the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame guy. He lived right there on Boulevard of the Arts, 6th Street. He grew up over in that community. Emily Booker, the first black school here, you know, she was right over on 7th Street. You know, I can go on and on with people like that. So anyway, I started telling this story to these building owners, and they said, okay. And I was like,
really?
Yeah. So now I go pricing murals. I'm like, oh, my God.
It's a lot of paint to fill up that space on the side of the building.
A lot of paint and a lot of dollars. So I had to, you know, raise the money. We've got 4 or 5 up right now.
So what's the arrangement? The building will allow you to put the mural up, correct? But you have to pay. You got to raise the money.
Funds.
Okay.
And we just got 3 of the bigger ones, and you know me, Trey. I like things big. Yeah. So those murals are 40 feet and bigger.
That's a big mural.
Yeah.
My mural is only like 16 feet.
Yeah. so and they're lighted. So.
Oh really? At nighttime.
Oh yeah. Light it up, baby.
Maybe we can take some pictures of it.
I see the Buck ONeal one every day.
Yeah.
And that thing is impressive, number one. Number two, I didn't know that history. I didn't know that he actually lived here.
Yes.
Because he was born in another part of Florida.
Let me tell you what happened with Buck ONeal. You're right. You know history.
He's a major leaguer.
He does.
Yeah, Buck ONeal, at that time when he was going to school, there was no black high school here. In fact, there was only 4 black high schools in the state of Florida. So Sarasota County school system, in fact, there's a article that we researched and found where the superintendent said, if a black kid in Sarasota only needed to go as far as 8th grade because he's going to be out on Palmer Farm cutting celery anyway. That was the attitude. Yeah. And that was the attitude through most of the South and most of the state of Florida. There was 4 high schools in the state of Florida: Jacksonville, Tampa, Miami, Dade, and the Fort Lauderdale
4
area.
black high schools.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when Buck was finishing his 8th grade year, 1927 was when Sarasota High School was opening up, the red brick building that's the museum now. Buck came home, told his grandma, I don't have to go anywhere. She goes, what are you talking about? They got a new high school out there, Sarasota High School. She said, sit down, boy. And she told him how this worked, how it worked. So he ended up going to Jacksonville in the high school at Edward Waters. You know, it's a college now. Edward Waters High School in Jacksonville. He was a star baseball player when he got there, and the rest is history. He ended up with the Kansas City Monarchs, who Jackie Robinson played for. In fact, he coached Jackie Robinson in the Monarchs. But he was a star player there. He was the first black coach in Major League Baseball. He was inducted in the Hall of Fame about 2 years ago now. Wow. That's why he's on that wall. That's part of why he's on it. He's mainly on that wall because he lived right down the street.
Yeah, right. That's prerequisite.
Yeah.
So who else is at the? How many murals are there?
Well, I've got 4 people. I've got Buck, Miss Booker, Leonard Reed, and the Colsons. And the Colsons are important for 2 reasons where their murals on it. Their murals on the Planned Parenthood building. Where that building is the first black church that was in Sarasota, Bethlehem Baptist Church. And right next door is where their house was. Part of the significance of him is he drove the stake at 5 points that plotted the city of Sarasota. And remember I used that number 1884? Mm-hmm. That's when that happened. He was the first black minister here, of course, but his wife was a midwife. So they're on the building where their home was, where he was a minister of the first black church, and she was a midwife.
Wow.
And she's on Planned Parenthood. That ain't the end.
That's pretty ironic.
But wait, there's more.
There's more. Right across the street is Rosemary Cemetery. When that cemetery was plotted, it was a all-white cemetery. A lot of Sarasota pioneers are buried in that cemetery. Mr. Gillespie, the Burns Court guy. I can go on and on. But there's 2 black people in there, and they're the Colsons. Because the Colsons, Mr. Colson worked for, remember I said he drove the state to plot Florida First Mortgage Company, who was the land sellers at that time, and that's who he worked for. And he worked for him all his life. So when he died, if you died here and you were black, you either was buried in Fort Myers, there was a little cemetery in Bradenton, maybe St. Pete.
Oh, wow.
All right? So the year prior to him dying, Woodlawn was open as a black cemetery, and it was what we call a Boot Hill type cemetery. You know, a couple of shovels in the ground, throw you in there, nice knowing you see you later. And the people that he worked for at the mortgage company, the First Mortgage Company, they were family to him. He was family to them, and they didn't want him buried in that cemetery. So under cover of darkness, they snuck in the back gate, and they buried Mr. Colson in the cemetery. Now, at that time, it was like to the back of the cemetery. I mean, like the back of the back. You go over there right now, his grave and his wife's graves are the two graves that's closest to that exit today. And that cemetery is full. They're still the closest one to the road.
Man, and they had to do it in the middle of the night, huh?
Yes. So somebody found out they was back there. They say, who's that back there? They say, that's Mr. Colson. So, oh, hell no. You got to dig him up. He can't be in the cemetery without a loved one. First Mortgage had a little more pull. They said, no, we're not digging him up. So he's staying there.
Yeah, so they were like the developers back in the day who ran the place.
Yeah.
They're the Bendersons.
Sounds familiar.
Wow. So they said, we're not digging him up. Say, yeah, you got to dig him up. Say, no, we're not going to dig him up. And you know what? When his wife dies, she's going to be buried in there.
It solves that problem, too.
And they say, okay. Nobody else. So that's why they're the only 2 people buried in that cemetery. So they're on that building right across the street from where their graves are.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
It's an awesome tribute,
That was a fun one.
Yeah.
The irony was wild.
I couldn't dream it up, could I? No.
You could. Well, you did. I mean, you did. So, well, I think it's a good time to segue, unless we want to.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're right. We could go on and on about your other roles, but we only have so much time.
Of course.
Let's be sure to get a plug in for what you do at Selby Gardens. So you want to You want to take that away, Brad?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we had Jennifer Romanecki on the podcast, and you know, Selby learned a lot about Selby Gardens and what they are doing for the community. You know, first of all, DEI is something that's somewhat new, right? So, you know, what exactly is your role at Selby Gardens, and how are you going about that? I'm just curious. I've got some other questions.
That title now is like a lot of other words or titles that's been hijacked and turned into a dirty thing to be. Mm-hmm. You know, who's against diversity and inclusion?
Nobody with a brain.
Yeah,
exactly. But they've turned that into something that is not what it is. Because when you look at the definitions of those two words, it's what everybody should want, you know. But you know, politics and things like that. But thank goodness I have a CEO who understands that and wants to make a difference in this community, not just at Selby. Because what I do at Selby and the diversity and inclusion that we do there it pans out.
Yeah,
it feeds the rest of the community. And quite frankly, when we look at it, if you look back, Selby wasn't as welcoming as it could have been or should have been back in the day, because that wasn't the culture here.
Yeah,
you know, it was different time, and people did things differently from their experiences.
Right. So it's nothing against Selby. It's just Selby was a reflection of the problems in the greater Sarasota community.
Exactly.
Yeah. So then in 2019, the board, because Selby was donated by one woman, and
yes,
then they bought the place next door, which we learned on the other episode. Mm-hmm. So it has a caretaker board, yes. And they decided in 19, hey, let's create this task force for diversity and inclusion. And your position, which is one of only 3 VPs at the place, came out of that.
Exactly.
Like, so what was the mandate they tasked you with?
Well, like I said, I have a CEO that's a really great person. She has a vision, and she goes about it in the right way. So when she asked me to do the job, she didn't know my history here. She knew a little of it, but she
had to get some insight from somewhere, because you were the perfect guy for the job.
But she didn't actually even know my history with Selby's.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because there's some stuff there. But and she laid out what she wanted this program to look like and asked me would I be willing to do it, and I was like, hell yeah. Yes. Yes.
Then it comes full circle, huh?
Yes. So, you know, my thing there is to open up Selby Gardens, find ways to develop programs that's going to attract the underserved people in this community. And when I say underserved, that don't mean black.
Yeah.
That means just what it says, underserved people.
Yeah.
And so I developed programs there that will facilitate that, and it's been smooth sailing, and it's been a whole different atmosphere over there, and they're pleased with it, thank goodness.
I think with a botanical gardens especially, you know, not everybody, especially in urban environments, not everybody has a garden. Right. So some of this stuff is not really accessible to people. So I feel like regardless of who the underserved people are, like you said, anybody who's doing outreach at a botanical gardens, it's their job to bring in people to the world of gardening and plants and plant diversity and plant life and all that. So, I mean, I would think children. And mainly children, right?
Yeah, well, young people in general,
exactly,
you know, are probably a hard target to get in through the door, right?
And
because what 5-year-old is concerned with gardening? They want
but
gizmos.
The playground there is great for them. They love that.
Once you get there, you be like, wow, I didn't know this.
Exactly.
I have a program that we established over there called My Garden, and it's intended to attract youth. We put on different programs there throughout the year that's youth oriented, and we bring these kids in. We also, for some really seriously underserved groups, we offer free memberships to these kids. They have to be tied to a 501c organization, but those free memberships don't only go to the kids, they go to everybody in that household. So that encourages them to come out and get involved in their gardens. You know, who knows? I might find the next great black botanist or something out there. You know, the next great Chinese botanists, you know. But the whole thing is to be inclusive and diverse with everything that Selby has to offer this community.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense because in larger cities, you know, with the increased resources and tax base, oftentimes they're able to provide a lot of those entries to museums and everything for free. Mm-hmm. We're not really quite there yet around here, but you guys are doing something to mitigate, you know, those differences that prevent the access, right?
The first time I was at Selby Gardens, I had to be 8, 9 years old. Remember I told you guys I was a bad little kid?
Yeah.
You mentioned it a few times.
I guess
you're telling the truth. So the summer come around, my mother didn't want to leave me at home, and down the street lived this guy named Mr. Yancey. Mr. Yancey was Mrs. and Mrs. Selby's yard man. That's before you called them horticulturists and botanists and all that. So she asked him, could I go with him to work? And he took me out there with him to work. And I walk in this place, and we go in the back gate and stuff, and I'm looking, this is their backyard? Backyard's from here to that wall. You know, like, what the hell? And she came out the door, and she was a hands-on person. She came out, she had the big hat, the thing I call the grandmama apron with the pockets in the bottom, and rubber boots. I'm like, what the hell? But she was giving them the marching orders, and the next thing you know, she's out there right with them. That's how I met Mrs. Selby.
So it was a good relationship then in the beginning. It wasn't.
One thing she always told me, because Limas Dixon, he was the other yard man, and the two of us about the same age. She said, don't go over near that boat. I said, boat? We spent all summer trying to untie that damn boat. Couldn't do it.
I think you touched on it. You know, when we first mentioned DEI, right? Mm-hmm. And I think the negative connotations associated with it. It sounds like your task, your initiative is diversifying really the people who are enjoying Selby Gardens, right? Mm-hmm. People who are coming to Selby Gardens, the patrons, if you will. Mm-hmm. You know, when we talk DEI in general, or when you hear that term, I think the connotation comes from, you know, diversifying the workforce, right? Mm-hmm. And the obvious elephant in the room is, you know, basically we hire the best person for the job, mm-hmm. right? Regardless of anything else. Mm-hmm. So that's where I think that comes from. Is that part of your role at all with hiring? Is it the hiring process
with Selby Gardens as well? Board. It's everything that goes on over there. I have my fingers on it to make sure that's the atmosphere, because you want your employees to reflect that also. We want everybody at Selby to understand that and to be part of that. Yeah. And that way it trickles down to the community. You know, if everybody out there has that attitude, you know, when you're out there amongst the people, you know, from the people that's out there picking up paper to the people that's up in the office doing that work, when they have that attitude, it makes for, number one, a better workplace at Selby.
It becomes a culture.
Right. And it makes a more welcoming attitude toward the people that's coming that normally probably wasn't showing up, say, 10, 15 years ago.
So what would you have to say to the person that, you know, with DEI has that feeling of like, well, listen, we hire the best person for the job. We don't have a quota of blacks or Asians or, you know, whatever race. We don't have a quota that we've got to hit and like, listen, we're not there yet, so you're getting the job because you're black or because you're Chinese or because whatever. How does that like work, right?
Well, number one, we have a great lady that runs our H&R department, and we communicate on that level all the time, and that's the mission. You know, when that's the mission to start with, there's never any problem. It's only a problem when one person's over here and the other person is over there in their mind or their attitudes, and they feel like that's why that person got that job. Yeah, you know, and it shows once somebody gets the job, because if you hire somebody just because of what they look like, a lot of times you're not going to get the best guy or lady. All right. So we make sure that's who gets the job. There's no quotas. I don't go down and ask her how many black people you hired today.
Right.
How many Hispanics you hired today or anything like that. It's who it can. First of all, who's going to come that's qualified and come and do the work, and that's the attitude. And when you run it like that, the rest of the employees see that. And they understand that that is the situation.
Yeah.
Because JoJo's messing up. JoJo can hit the road.
Yeah.
So
it's really
and Sarah might have his job next week.
Yeah. What I'm hearing is it's a belief system of the diversity and the inclusion, not necessarily mandating we've got to hire this many of this type or the other. Right?
Brett, the problem you're describing is a lot more relevant in places other than Sarasota.
Right.
And I'll tell you one reason why.
Clearly.
Sarasota is not as diverse as a lot of places,
Exactly.
by the numbers. It just ain't.
Yeah.
Right? The big problem we have around here, if we want to point fingers, is nepotism. The unqualified people in a lot of these positions that in all types of organizations are only there because they know so-and-so or they're so-and-so's cousin or they're so-and-so's kid.
You see it all the time.
You see it all the time. I see it all the time. But, it's definitely something to be aware of.
Yeah. But like I said, once again, I have a CEO that she's on a mission, and she's on several missions, but her first mission is to make Selby Garden a world-class garden.
Well on its way.
It's well on its way.
One of the most extensive collections of orchids of any place in the world.
Yes.
I think she said the most.
The most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The most.
Do you have any favorite, exhibitions or programs? I know you have your Baby to My Garden program, but any other ones you want to highlight? I have one in mind if you don't have one.
Well, there's one going on right now.
Let's go.
The one that's going on right now is called Highwaymen.
That's the one I had in mind.
I knew it.
Interstate Connections. And when David brought his idea, his concept to me, I was like, what? The concept of interstate connections is that, for those of you that may or may not know anything about the Highwaymen were a group of black artists that primarily operated on the East Coast of Florida. During that period of time, we're talking about the 50s, 60s, once again, Jim Crow, they couldn't get any of their art exhibited. Plus, they were poor artists, most of them untrained, technically untrained. So what they did was they would go to the beaches and get on the sidewalk, because once again, just like here in Sarasota, this is going to be the connection. During that time, we could not go to the beach. There was a couple beaches, one way down in Venice or the one up under the Skyway Bridge. That's where we went to the beach. We couldn't go to Lido, Siesta, those beaches.
I always thought South Lido was the one. No.
To be fair, I hate the beach anyways, and Under the Bridge sounds like
under the beach. Never go to the beach.
Under the Bridge sounds like the best one because you got shade. That's my rule. But if I'm going to the beach, I better have shade.
But that was another Jim Crow type thing. So in 1954, Mr. Neil Humphrey started a beach protest. The beach protest existed every Sunday after church. They would do a car caravan out to Lido, and they chose Lido, number one. It was the closest one to Newtown. Plus, back then, a whole lot of black people didn't have cars, so they had a car caravan. They would go there. And all they would do is drive out, get out their cars, and just wade in the water. They wasn't out there for a picnic or a day in the sun. Stay out there maybe 20, 30, 40 minutes, get back in the cars and go back home. They did that for 10 years.
Wow.
From 54 to 64. And you know what happened in 64? The federal law
changed.
Yes, where you couldn't discriminate in public facilities. 10 years they did that.
So did it change because of the caravan to the beach, or did it change and it
sounds like that didn't
10
change
years into 10 years?
Yeah,
nothing,
10 years.
Did it even make headlines?
Oh yeah, it was a national story. There's newspaper, and give you this quick story. Longboat Key, all of us know where that is. Yeah. The county commission was crazy right now to keep these people from protesting because just like now, Lido is an international beach. You know, you go out there right now, most of those people are from somewhere else.
Yeah.
People don't live in Sarasota that's out there. So the county commission is crazy about what to do about this. So they say, you know what? They told the leaders at the time, how about we give you guys a colored beach on Longboat Key?
What color are you going to make it?
Imagine that. Imagine if they had said yes. Longboat Key be a little different today.
Yeah.
Now, I tell you what happened, though. Those people on Longboat Key say, oh, hell. Did you see what the county commission doing? We got to do something. Yeah, how about we incorporate and become a city so they can't do that? Longboat Key is a city today.
Wow.
Because of that beach protest.
I never heard that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's why we're lucky to be sitting in these seats, man. We get great people on here. We hear these great stories. It's crazy.
But I think more so, people think, oh, that stuff was all a long time ago. I'm like, dude, that stuff that happened a long time ago, that's affecting our lives today.
That was what, in the 60s, late 50s, 60s, they incorporated?
In the 60s.
Yeah.
Tie the beach back into the Highwaymen, though, because I think the
we're
Highwaymen
the Highwaymen guys.
the Highwaymen and the beach,
they're
right?
artists.
Important.
Right.
So while they were doing that over there, these people were doing this beach protest here. So that's really the tie-in.
Gotcha.
Same attitudes, same thing, but different methods of changing it.
Yeah.
Right, on the East Coast, their protests involved trying to make a couple dollars selling art to
I was
tourists,
gonna say
right?
they were going to the beach to sell their art.
They were going to the sidewalk by the
and
beach.
they weren't really supposed to be there.
Bingo.
Okay.
And what?
Well, they were there. They had to be on the sidewalk.
And they couldn't go
be
out
on the
to
beach.
the actual beach. Okay, understood.
What is the exhibit at Selby like? What is that?
It's beautiful, man. We've got original Highwaymen paintings. Now, these guys were selling these things for $15, $20.
What are they worth now?
They got some that sell for $40.
Yeah.
But I got to do this.
Do it.
Remember I told you I was a little bad boy?
Yes.
No, we forgot. Only every 5 minutes.
My grandfather lived in Delray Beach.
Okay.
So here comes summer again. Mom's got to figure out what to do with me. She sends me over to Delray to hang out with my granddaddy. The black community at that time was 3 blocks from the beach. Of course, it's gone now, too, just like Overtown. You know, as they get smarter, they keep moving us out of there when that property starts becoming valuable. But at that time, I could walk to the beach every day. I used to get up and walk down there. Guess who I saw at the beach? The Highwaymen.
Oh.
I saw these guys.
And they were they famous at the time?
No.
No.
This is when they were selling them for $15 and $20. And they had trunks, loads of these things.
Should have got a couple.
It's basically just a generic term
That's
for
what I thought about it.
Man.
I thought about that.
Should have loaded up.
I could have walked away with 2 or
Had
3 of those
exhibit.
things, man, and have me a little money.
You know, it's a particular genre of street art that people have kind of figured out over the years. Wait a minute, this was a special thing that happened in this very special time in history.
And one of the
Has a
things,
good story behind it.
Yeah, that's why it's valuable.
Right.
And one of the things is these guys, they were poor. You know, they couldn't really afford art supplies.
And no gallery access.
Yeah, they were doing what they...
And there's one down there you got to see of this material that this guy used to do this painting on. And it's the most expensive. In fact, we got it glassed in over there. And it gives you some kind of idea of how these guys were struggling. And the one thing that stuck out to me when I saw them doing it, because they were right there on the sidewalk doing it, they were doing it with those palette knives. They didn't have brushes and stuff because they couldn't afford them. And that knife, they kept that. That's what they painted it with. Wow. That's one of the unique things about their art. That's all their art was done with those palette knives, not brushes.
And it kind of lended to what Felipe said, to the mystique behind it, right? Okay, these guys were able to create such a unique thing with limited tools.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
And I guess the tie, to go back to why is it at Selby Gardens is a lot of what they painted was what they saw in landscapes.
Yeah,
how long is the display still?
Till the end of the month.
Put that on the calendar. Morgan.
Go see it.
Take the kids by there for sure.
And you might see something of somebody you know in connection with the beach protest.
Okay.
What are you looking at me for?
He pointed at you.
He was just talking about it in general.
It was just hand stuff.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know the Highwaymen were just on the East Coast.
Yeah,
but that's a good tie-in.
I don't think they're for sale.
Good deal. We brushed over the Redskins too quickly, and we skipped my question. How many NFL draft picks came out of the Redskins? I want to get an idea for what kind of talent went through that league.
Redskins are a special organization. I tear up every time I think about it. But there was we've had last count 28 guys that got drafted from that program that eventually got drafted to the NFL.
Was Trey Martell one of them?
I missed the bill on that one.
Dang it.
Trey actually played for me 2 times in his football career.
This is true.
Was he your all-star or what?
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
That's true.
I never doubted it.
I played for Redskins my first year of tackle football. Walt was still my coach at Apache, and then he became the commissioner of the Redskins, and a guy named Larry took over Apache, and that's when I started to blossom. And then I blossomed up into the major leagues or the Warrior division for Redskins, and then full circle when I was on varsity for Sarasota, he was the wide receivers coach. So.
Gotcha. We got to make sure we clip that highlight reel for Trey. It's like the timeline of his football career.
He just cut it on.
I love it. And this is where it all started. So,
I mean, I have similar feelings that he has when I see that the Redskins field abandoned. It's nostalgic, and I wish it does come back.
Yeah.
Regardless of the name, I'd like to see it come back.
Yeah.
So then when I have little minions running around, they can play Redskins football.
Yeah, I mean, it seems quite ignorant to do anything else with it at this point. It's a football facility already. What's the best use of it? Keep it a football facility.
And now you get some real muscle behind you. Sarasota SpeaX.
Yeah.
Well, I think what makes it particularly tough is they're putting so much money into that little corridor.
Yeah.
That it's like, how much more would it take to really revive that great tradition? Probably not much.
I'll tell you something I heard. This is something I heard somebody talking about. That is part of the pressure is coming from the Baltimore Orioles. Wanting to move their facilities from Twin Lakes up to that area. So that pressure would be on the Little League field and the Redskins area. But who knows what happens with that. But at the same time, if that happens, they still need to build a youth football facility somewhere.
Yeah, no doubt.
Up in that area. Because when you look at youth sports facilities here, there's nothing north of that 17th Street, 12th Street area for the county, in the county. You know, next thing up is Benderson. And I don't see too many people look like me up there rowing. I'm just saying.
They need a VP of DEI over there.
Well, but that area needs to have a legitimate sports facility for youth somewhere.
Yeah.
Are there any roundabouts in the Newtown area?
Not yet.
Not yet. Are they coming?
I don't know. We're gonna try to keep that traffic.
Well, no, I mean, you got one at 10th Street by the boat ramp.
Well, as a fourth generation
close.
Sarasotan, you got an opinion on this. So.
Yeah. So,
okay.
Tom and Law wants to know, what are your opinions on roundabouts? Do you love them? Do you hate them?
I have mixed emotions about roundabouts. Sometimes I wonder why they are where they are. I understand why they work when people know how to drive in them. That's the problem. When you got people that don't know what the hell they're doing.
See, that's a really, really common answer here.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder. Some people give that answer. Are they the ones that don't know?
I do.
Okay, you got it. I do.
I'm the guy on the horn.
No
It's
stop.
a yield, not a stop.
Yeah, shit.
So, but, when we ask about roundabouts, we're also it's a closet way of asking about how you feel about growth and change in Sarasota, and your opinion, being probably the only people we've had who's a fourth generation Sarasotan, would be interesting to us on how you feel about some of the growth and change.
The growth here is terrible. First of all, for real, seriously. First of all, Sarasota was never supposed to be what Sarasota is.
Yeah, we weren't prepared.
So the planning never happened to have all these people here, and then you stick them all in a little space. That's the roundabouts. You got to do something because they got to move this traffic.
Well, to piggyback on that, all this flooding that's going on is a product of all the growth as well.
Yeah.
If you want to, We're probably pro-growth on this show.
We are absolutely pro-growth,
Yeah,
but
but
his
there are
point
problems with it,
still
yeah.
remains the same.
It's not being controlled or done correctly.
Yeah.
I'm anti-blanket statements, Trey. So as much as I love growth,
He's a kiss ass or whoever the guest is.
I like.
That's what he meant to say.
He's pro-gas.
I like
pro-gas.
things that make sense, and yes, I am pro-guest too. But the flooding, I mean, people, it sucks. It's really hard.
It was a wake-up call.
Well, I
It was
talked
right
to
in the neighborhood right
someone
across from me was the one that
with a
was
theory.
really affected.
Yeah.
They said that the waste plant backed up, and all that flooding is shit.
Yeah,
Shit water.
they said that. It was like some 30 million gallons or something in Bradenton and a bunch in Sarasota. But
Knee
yeah,
deep in shit.
the neighborhood, Laurel Meadows, right across from my neighborhood,
bad.
was horrible.
Where's that at?
So the end of Palmer and where Bee Ridge Extension used to be now
Okay,
Lorraine.
yeah,
Palmer
yeah.
and Lorraine there. My neighborhood was flooded, never got up to the houses, but the neighborhood across the street, I mean, minimum 4 inches of water in every
Well,
house.
if you know the history of those areas was originally farm-like areas. So I mean, you're flat on the ground.
Yeah.
And when they built those places, they built them flat on the ground.
Well, the crazy thing is, it wasn't even the sad thing as well is that it wasn't a flood zone, a particular flood zone, right? So none of them had flood insurance.
No
The
flood
majority
insurance.
of them didn't have flood insurance. So
Right.
we did a drive in our neighborhood to donate some supplies and things like that, and then we just took the kids around the neighborhood just to see and kind of explain to them why we were just shopping for supplies for them. And the whole neighborhood essentially, just cars lined on every inch of the street,
Right.
and people helping, moving furniture out, taking walls out, doing everything they could. So it was pretty crazy to see.
I noticed a lot of the flooding was along that Philippi Creek corridor.
And Pinecraft got hit really hard, too.
Pinecraft.
That's
Like,
always
really bad.
flooded.
Bingo.
That place has flooded forever, and they've done some work over there. It's going to always flood because if you know how that water flows in Philippi Creek, it floods back into those neighborhoods. Now you got all these other neighborhoods built around. You don't have the drainage ditches anymore that used to hold the water in the old days, okay? Now you got drains in the roads that all drain to the same place, to the creek. The water coming back up the creek, and you got all these new neighborhoods forcing the water in there. What you get?
Flooding.
A flood.
Yeah.
We're going to have a water ecology expert who has been working on this for a while. We're talking to right now on pretty soon.
Cool.
So I think that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, we got to get them on real soon. Sooner than
So
later.
we know the why as opposed to just, overdevelopment.
Yeah.
I told you the why.
Right.
Backed up shitter.
Well, bring us home, Felipe.
One of the last questions we always like to ask on the podcast is, you've been on Sarasota SpeaX. You see what we do here. We want to introduce people to Sarasota who they need to know. Who do you know who Sarasota needs to know, who we might not know?
You mentioned Vicki Odom. Vicki's doing a really, really great job with her work on bringing that culture center to the Newtown community. And that's going to be a place where all Sarasotans can come and experience part of Sarasota's history and part of the culture of that community that has not been available or even respected or even thought about from a group that's been vital to this area forever, And anytime you do something like that, you bring people together, which is, I know, said a lot and might sound corny, but when that happens, everybody lives better. Everybody.
That's a great one, Vicki. We love to be surprised, though. You have anybody else who maybe we might have overlooked?
Can I say my wife and get some points?
I mean, maybe just,
There you go. You did.
I'd like our chief of police. I really like that guy.
We had him on.
Yeah, he's doing a lot. He has a really solid outlook on police work and being involved in community.
Vicki Oldham.
You had Jennifer.
We did.
Police chief.
Vicki Oldham is a good one. And if I could use your name, I don't know her very well. I think I've only met her once.
Yeah.
But, we'll say Walter said it's cool.
Yeah.
I'll reach out to her.
Yeah, she's cool.
Very cool.
Plus, she's an TV personality,
Right,
so
right.
you're gonna get some. You're gonna be like, loosen up, girl.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Have you had a non on?
No, he's on my list.
Yeah.
He was going to fill in for somebody, but he had a conflict, but he's interested.
Yeah.
So I know he's doing a lot of big things in the Rosemary.
He is.
Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate Overtown. Yeah, we appreciate the history lesson. We appreciate all you're doing for the community as well.
Want to tell you about that time Trey got knocked out?
Yeah, we'll close with that.
I'm just teasing. Trey is a good player.
Now we figured it out. Thank you so much, Walter.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks a lot, Walter.
Hey, thank you. This has been fun, man.
I'm glad I told you it would be fun, right?